seats. We're ready to proceed with our next presentation. And if the hostess is at the door, please close the door so that we're ready to move on. If it's not here, we'll find it. What's your name? Emery Gorman. Please be seated so that we're ready to proceed. Who's thanking? Thanking? Okay, here they are here. Oh, I'll just. It's time for our introduction. Ladies, please take a seat. I'll leave them there for her.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to begin by reminding you that if you have not visited the Coady booth out in the exhibits area, to please take some time to do that today. What you're about to see and hear is your 2016 Coady Institute donations and how they were used. You will hear testimonials of 6 women that benefited from your generous donations and the impact those scholarships have made on their lives. And the video, please.
I deal with women in agriculture. I get to work with women. So I have now learned how to deal with women. I don't get to go into the communities and tell them what to do. No. Now I've learned that I have to work with them, get to listen what they really want to do.
I have enhanced my leadership skills, and this is a plus on my part because trying to promote women participation, you need to be at that level yourself.
The knowledge which we have gathered from here at Coady, it will benefit a lot of people in the society.
I was thinking, who paid? But I want to thank them at this moment, having realized they're the ones that will mobilize, put together the resources to sponsor some of us. And not that we are the best, but I really feel humbled and grateful.
I am very grateful to Catholic Women League. They have supported me for this study so that I grown so much and I increased my knowledge, my wisdom, my all the ability.
I don't take this for granted. I really appreciate, and even my organization too appreciates. So, wow.
And may God grant them more resources so that they will be able to help others as well.
So ladies, you have an opportunity to see the impact that your donations have made, so please continue to contribute. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. June Weber. June Weber joined Coady Institute at St. FX University on September 1st, 2015. She brings a wealth of experience as a recognized leader in global health policy and development. Prior to joining the Coady Institute, June worked as a health and development expert with national and multilateral organizations, including the World Bank, on strategies designed to advance universal health coverage. She was the inaugural director of the Department of International Policy and Development at the Canadian Nurses Association, where she provided leadership in multiple global and national settings, leading the organization's contribution to nursing, health, and social policy. She has traveled extensively throughout her professional career, working with national and global counterparts to advance health and health system leadership and capacity. As a health and development professional in Southern Africa from 1988 to 1999, Dr. Weber first worked in Zimbabwe on community development strategies focused on HIV and AIDS, then in South Africa, where she supported the efforts of professionals and activists in the early post-apartheid years to form the first racially unified health professional association. Over the years, June has served in a variety of board positions and committees in Canada and internationally, notably with the World Health Organization's Strategic and Technical Advisory Committee, and as a director with the National Board of the Canadian Council of International Cooperation. She was appointed adjunct professor, University of Ottawa, in 2014. Please help me welcome Dr. June Weber.
Good morning, everyone. How wonderful to be in this room with 800 women, members of the Catholic Women's League. It's my first opportunity to share a space with you and to hear you, and I think I'm particularly fortunate to be with you as you're trying to make sense of your direction over the next 5 or 10 years, because it's in those discussions that you really can put your fingers on the pulse of the membership. And as an outsider, first time in, I will tell you that one of the things that comes through loud and clear is that there's work to do, there's a future and change to navigate, but the relationships and the energy in this room seems to be genuine and paying attention to one another. So it's great to be here, and I have tremendous confidence that you're going to be navigating a very productive and relevant future for the League. So thank you. So I want to start by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Abeguat Mi'kmaq First Nations. And I want to start by acknowledging the CWL for the long-standing support to the work that we have been doing at the Coady Institute, as was just shown on the video. The Institute has had the honor of being a partner with the Catholic Women's League, as we just saw, since 1961, when the League first made a donation of $1,000 to support our work. Over the years, the CWL, National Council, and individual parish councils, even our own, the St. Ninian's Parish, have been loyal and significant supporters of the Coady Institute, providing annual scholarships to women like those who you just saw in the video, leaders from Asia, from Africa, and from Latin America, who in turn have returned to their countries where they have been leaders in social change, helping thousands of people in their communities to improve their lives through change. So, you know, your long-standing support is something that we really do value. So thank you very, very much. I want to sincerely thank you for your belief in our important work, and also to point out that this makes us old friends. Old friends who share some very important attributes. For example, we share, as I could see this morning, a commitment to social justice, believing that a just and fair world is possible. That is, a world that enables citizens to experience, as Moses Coady would say, a full and abundant life. And we appreciate that as assemblies, the CWL, a membership-based organization of women of faith, courage, inspiration, and vision, and in my case, an institute of educators, social innovators, community practitioners, that we have a role to play in society, that we must use that vision, skill, and resources to unite and strengthen people and their communities. I think we most definitely share a vision for a better world. Beyond these similarities as women and social justice leaders, we have done much to confront challenges, to see opportunities in difficult times, and to create spaces where we can move forward together. Women who share a Catholic faith have been steadily building movements that bring together people under the banner of relationship building, education, aimed at strengthening communities, and this is something that will go on into the future. One example spreading through society for close to 100 years is from my own backyard. It was rooted in the economic inequalities resulting from the shift from agriculture to industry in the early 20th century. When growing market forces and industrialization pitted producers, whether they were fishers or farmers or miners, in competition with one another. Father Jimmy Tompkins, a Roman Catholic priest, academic leader at St. FX University, who held a solid vision for the university's role and responsibilities to people within a community, was redeployed to Canso, Cape Breton. In actual fact, he was exiled for his thinking that was a little bit too radical for the times. Progressive in our terms, perhaps. In this small fishing village, Tompkins recognized that the community was splintered by economic forces, and community members, men and women, neighbors, friends, people who had grown up next door to one another and who relied on the same forms of production, were divided. So he started by organizing study clubs where people named and confronted their differences. They recognized that they had common challenges and strengths and possibilities, and they worked together to form collectives that successfully bargained for a fair share of profits. With success and momentum building in Canso and across the region, Tompkins enlisted Reverend Dr. Moses Coady in these efforts. Both these men were visionaries. The former, an adult educator and strategist, the latter, a mobilizer as well as an effective and charismatic communicator with connections. Together, they built support across Nova Scotia to replicate the formation of community dialogue around hard issues and strategies for a better life. That spurred the formation of cooperatives and credit unions across Atlantic Canada, bringing people together to strengthen their vision for their communities and their livelihoods. This became known as the Antigonish movement, a social movement that ignited citizen-led community change across the Atlantic region. Now, I tell you that story because central to this story, the success of the Antigonish movement and the subsequent formation of the university's extension department were Catholic women. These were women who were all too invisible as champions, educators, and writers behind the scenes who captured this story. Women such as Kay Thompson, a teacher and the first woman to join the movement, Zita O'Hearn Cameron, and Ida Gallant Delaney, who throughout the next 50 years were the journalists, the writers, the authors who made visible the strategies and successes of the Antigonish movement through a range of publications and study club booklets like The Maritime Techniques and Consumer Cooperation, The Atlantic Cooperator, that's now evolved to be the Canadian Cooperator, and the well-known Coady publication, Masters of Their Own Destiny. Joining this movement was a congregation formed in 1900 to support the St. FX campus, the Sisters of St. Martha. By the 1920s, the Marthas were eager to be more actively involved in communities. One of them, Sister Marie Michael McKinnon, pulled together key publications, starting the first People's Library at St. FX, which is now considered to be one of the best adult education libraries in all of Canada. These institutions, led by Catholic women, have continued to grow in their relevance and constructive impact in the work that we do, and are highly active in social justice activities that we lead. In my short time at Coady, which is only 2 years now, I've been actively collaborating with the Marthas, who 6 years ago provided an endowment that enables annual funding for the Coady Chair in Social Justice. So every year, we identify and bring a serious local or global social justice leader to lead discussions on our campus. These are important conversations that help to expand and shape understanding and insights that are held by students, by faculty, staff, and the community. This year, we've awarded the 2017 chair to Doreen Bernard, a remarkable Mi'kmaq woman, third-generation residential school survivor and environmentalist. And Doreen's work is primarily in the area of water protection. She's profoundly articulate and an unassuming leader at the same time, who's going to have a remarkable impact. And this, of course, reminds us that there's no better time in Canada's history to be intentionally convening these conversations, as that will help us to bridge our understanding of our Indigenous peoples, and most importantly, to enrich our own lives with insights into Indigenous ways of knowing. So the Coady Chair in Social Justice will do this. It will make sure that we're having these conversations, at times difficult conversations, and it was the Marthas who have been making this possible. So these examples illustrate the long tradition of women of Catholic faith as visionaries, leaders, actors, who are helping repair and hold our societies together. These partnerships are woven into the Institute's work, forming strong contributions that meaningfully advance our work on a day-to-day basis. So, as I can see from our time with you this morning and your time here together, that you're focusing on setting your vision, your direction, and priorities as you approach a significant anniversary in 2020. I think your 100th, right? It's an amazing achievement. Over the past year, Coady, too, has undertaken a similar journey of developing its new institutional strategy. As you know, it's critical, as we heard this morning, for an institution to reflect from time to time in order to take a good look at itself, to revisit its history and evolution, and to move beyond its own point of reference, to take into account the broader perspectives and realities in this dramatically and fast-paced changing world. It's a time to affirm direction, priorities, in essence, to sort out what it needs to do to have a relevant and meaningful impact, in our case, locally and globally, which I also think is your case. In this regard, I think we share that strong commitment for imagining a better world. As Canadians, we're doing so from a position of tremendous privilege because we have had the good fortune to experience one of the most stable democracies on earth, something we must never take for granted. Our democracy, with this rich and extraordinarily beautiful environment, has enabled us, particularly as women, to have access to choices in education, every day, what to wear, who to associate with, whether, and who to marry, to the kind of advancement that we'd like to see for ourselves in professional and service domains. As Fran noted, I have arrived here having worked globally on health policy and development now for over 30 years. For 12 of those years, I lived and worked in Southern Africa, benefiting from the wisdom during that early post-apartheid moment, the wisdom and determination of so many friends, scholars, community leaders, and activists who had navigated a terribly difficult time. So I benefited from their tremendous optimism and their determination and hope for a more just and collaborative world. And I think that this is so important because we have so much to do, particularly as women. And I'll say it's an extraordinary time in many respects in that the world has seen considerable change, something that we often take for granted. Yet, in considering this world we share, it's safe to say that we are at what Barack Obama has recently referred to as a critical inflection point, a moment in time when much of the growth, stability, and infrastructure feels as though it's being shaken. We can see around us a sense of increasing uncertainty and, in many settings, waning or lost trust in systems and leaders. And for many, uncertainty for the future, particularly for our children and for their children. So while our world is most definitely experiencing some strain and shakiness, it is, of course, not the first time in history that this has been the case. Think back, as I did earlier, to the global depression of the 1930s and to the 2 world wars in our parents' and grandparents' times. Yet, since that time, efforts on the global stage, largely through the UN system, have created spaces for generative and solutions-based dialogue, which have at times been strategic, collaborative, and quite effective. For example, the World Health Organization and UN systems' response to the Ebola virus just 2 years ago. I was working at the World Bank at the time as a health consultant and had the opportunity to witness this multilateral machinery coming together to address the short and medium-term challenges that threaten to spread throughout West Africa presented by the Ebola virus. The World Bank, the WHO, USAID, along with global leaders, even our own, came together. And of course, the first priority was to understand this malicious virus and whether it could be stopped from taking lives, and then, of course, preventing it from spreading. But at the same time, the focus was on systems, the shortcomings of the public health system in Sierra Leone that would allow this to happen, as well as surrounding countries, the impact on lost production, like agriculture and food production, on the local population, the market systems. So they worked hard, and they worked intensively, and I think they did very, very good work. So our generations have benefited from the system that continues to facilitate forms of global multilateral collaboration, yet there are a number of shared issues that we must and cannot ignore. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, announced in 2015 as the 2030 Leave No One Behind mandate, names 17 priorities for global collaboration. For those of you who are familiar with the 2015 Millennium Development Goals, you'll recognize a significant shift from an orientation on 8 goals focused on the so-called Global South to these goals that signify a global response to issues that we all share. The number is up, and these goals are for all of us. So this is a critically important shift in thinking. In essence, we are all in this together to address issues that relate to achieving zero hunger, quality education, gender equality, decent work, all issues that we know exist here in Canada and that we need to address. I want to point to 2, though, very briefly, the 2 I consider to be game changers that I think we need to be paying attention to. The first one is no poverty, and it's partner inequity, exacerbated by the growing gap between the rich and the poor. This is perhaps one of the most challenging. It occurs in a world where global market systems are more mature, and while capitalism and open markets have generated tremendous wealth, and in some cases prosperity, we know the distribution of wealth is highly unequal. Last year, Oxfam published research showing that the richest 1% own more than the other 99% together, globally. Now, if that doesn't take your breath away. At a more granular level, this was just confirmed this year, just 8 people, all of them men, own as much wealth as the poorest half of the entire population. 3.6 billion people. I don't know about you, but I think that these are grotesque facts, and it certainly takes my breath away. The production has improved. Distribution, we know, though, is dramatically uneven and highly unfair and highly inequitable. And of course, we can anticipate that this reality disproportionately affects women and girls in Canada and around the world. Secondly, as though that one wasn't bad enough, our consumption patterns have had a tragic impact on the environment. Social Development Goal 13. We're all too aware that climate change is the most serious reality facing the sustainability of populations. And we can be certain that the planet is going to be fine. It would not be the first time that it's had to set or reset, push the reset button. So the planet will survive. People, on the other hand, are going to have a hard time. So what we do know for sure is that we have the evidence and we have the know-how as civilization to begin to be innovative and forward-thinking with introducing the change that is needed. And as somebody said earlier, change is hard, but we need to move in that direction. Here, too, we have a lot of work to do to meet with diverse opinions that are all too often associated with self-interest, a factor that impedes our response to this urgent reality. So at Coady, we've recognized that addressing these and many other shared issues calls for bridging differences and preparing communities for imagining a better world. Among us here, I suspect there's tremendous hope and determination to intentionally make a difference. And importantly, we have an opportunity to bridge the differences across cultures, belief systems, race, ways of knowing and being. I think we all get this. Yet forces in society have long promoted a security in sameness, with messages that skew perceptions of the other, whether it has to do with ethnicity, with belief systems, sexual orientation, race, gender. Media and technology have done much to reinforce that difference, enabling us to move into spaces that fit with our opinions, that give us comfort because we share those with others, rather than basing opinions necessarily on evidence, on logic, and on reason. So at Coady, we've recognized that addressing these and many other shared issues calls for bridging differences and preparing communities for imagining that better world. A vision for a just and better world that's rooted in understanding and appreciating difference, diversity, that steps outside our world into the world of others and allows our curiosity to consider who is most different and pursuing what that has to teach us. We do that every day in our learning spaces. Over the years, Coady's programming has evolved to engage people from around the world in Canada, people seriously interested in shaping social change in their communities. Our on-campus program draws people from different walks of life, different nations, states, countries, in programming that focuses intensely on changing the margins of thinking, to enable us all to look into the lives and contexts of others who join us on campus while drawing out and building on their and our own expertise, insights, and wisdoms. We've become a fertile ground of difference in backgrounds, beliefs, orientations, and the energies that we do bring. And we all benefit on a day-to-day basis by navigating these differences, by pulling them out, by interrogating, by looking for them as we explore and share common solutions to the major problems that we share. So the future direction that we set aligns with a strong belief in the role of citizens with agency to build their communities. The direction that we set for ourselves is grounded in 3 strategic priorities that has at its core a framework known as asset-based community development, ABCD, a framework that was inspired close to 100 years ago. So for a moment, let me recall Atlantic Canada's history once again, where I described the Antigonish movement as how communities scattered throughout northeast Nova Scotia were rebuilding the foundations of their local economies based on producer, consumer, and financial cooperatives. At the height of the Great Depression, many of these people of very little means accomplished this by rebuilding what Moses Coady described as using what they have to secure what they have not. Now, they didn't call this ABCD at the time. However, Coady and colleagues were describing citizen-led community development that combined natural resources with people's skills, capacities, savings, and social capital to rebuild and strengthen communities and local economies. This remains the essence of our work today. Close to 90 years later, our intent is to generate results that reach deeply into communities, bridging differences and points of uncertainty to achieve strong communities whose citizens are the authors of much-needed change. Yet, a number of years ago, the Institute asked itself whether our preoccupation with helping communities identify needs and diagnose problems was actually disempowering people, turning them into our clients, our beneficiaries, rather than helping them become more active citizens driving their own development. We decided to look away from government and NGO-sponsored projects to explore this question to the activities that informal associations of people were undertaking around the world. The more we looked for this positive deviance, as it was called, the more we realized how much these communities and initiatives had to teach us. So this journey took us to a dozen countries, such as Ecuador, where a small group of indigenous women sharing traditional herbal remedies at a marketplace Saturday mornings became a 600-member medicinal plant producers association exporting containers of processed plants to Europe and to North America. It also took us to the local community of St. Andrews, just down the road from Antigonish, with a 200-year tradition of innovation at driving their own development, including the building of a fire hall, ball fields, community center, curling rink, and senior housing apartments. This community is an example of success. So we tried to understand the story of these communities from an inside perspective. How did they use what they had to identify and mobilize their assets? How did they build community identity? How did they sustain this over time? And how did they get others to invest in them in order to secure what they had not? And what did we find? So we learned how people organized to survive in times of crisis, how they organized to demand basic government services, and how they organized to stimulate their local economies. In essence, how these folks produced livelihoods and communities at one and the same time. We found that communities that build from the inside out have citizens at the center of their development. And we identified several key attributes. I think this community might relate to some of them. It starts with leadership that is able to stimulate a sense of pride and opportunity, and leadership that can draw on a well-articulated set of values that inspire collective action and that brings a strong narrative of responsibility to others. Sound familiar? We found that leadership is spread through the community and not vested in a particular charismatic individual. And we identified people who can bridge the gap between associations and institutions, between generations, between residents and immigrants. And importantly, we recognized a capacity to innovate socially and technically through blending local knowledge with new ideas, along with the willingness to take that big leap into change and capacity to identify new opportunities. These are attributes of people who have developed a strong sense of control over their lives and their livelihoods, and who engage with external agencies on their own terms. So these are the histories that continue to underpin Coady's vision for the future. Coady's institutional strategy is rooted in this commitment to community leadership for change. Our 5-year strategy is premised on our belief for citizen-led, asset-based, community-driven leadership, using what they have to secure what they have not. Next year, we mark the Antigonish movement's 100th anniversary. We'll use that opportunity to convene more conversations, many of them challenging, with community leaders in Canada and around the world, to recall this remarkable history and use it as one reference point and generate imagination and collaboration for the future. So, as you can well imagine, it's an exciting time for us, at times cautious and not without its niggly tensions of change. Yet I think we share optimism, curiosity, and determination to continue to bring meaningful change to the world around us. And I trust that you'll take a look at our strat plan. I know that we have it in at the booth in the room next door. So let me start by thanking you once again for inviting me to be here with you today. It's been a very meaningful experience for me, and I started with a word of appreciation. I certainly want to close with the same message. Your support over the years has meant a tremendous amount to us, and it will continue to mean that in order to bring these women from around the world, and Canada as well, to benefit from a leadership program that begins to connect them with their own possibilities as well as the possibilities of others. So this is extremely important work and a valuable contribution that you're making. I wish you every success with your own deliberations. I look forward to our ongoing collaboration. I invite you all to come and visit us in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. I certainly can guarantee you that if you come, you will be warmly welcomed. And I look forward to that Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weber, for your presentation today. This long partnership and collaboration continues to evolve and has helped us to understand more clearly the vision of Coady and its founders, great Nova Scotians as well. You spoke so eloquently of the work of Coady and the reality of sustainability, be it in environmental, education, research, and partnerships, and helping engaging leaders in their own communities, is a message that we continually need to be reminded of. Thank you for reinforcing the message of Coady and its mission for a just and better world. And also, we share the direction of Coady to be innovative as a global leader in social justice and advocacy. This is what the League is all about. And I believe you mentioned the communities of St. Andrews and also Antigonish. We do have a presence there as well. I think one quote that resonated with me was using what they have to secure what they have not. And isn't that what the League is all about? Thank you so much for enlightening us today.